Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, someone is in Dr. Blue today. Thank you, Nick, for reminding me. Okay. Anyway, in case anyone wonders who I'm ready for tonight. All right. It was an accident, really. But I do support that. Let's call the meeting to order for the Deschutes County Board of County Commissioners. It happens to be October 28, 2024. And we'll start with citizen input. Is there anyone in the room that cares to make comments that has filled out a blue form? It is Dr. Blue Day. Sorry for any of you Yankees out there. Brenda, is anyone online? No one's online either. Okay, well, you'll have your opportunity on Wednesday if you at 9 a.m. if you missed it today. Let's go with item number 1, please.
Good afternoon, board. For the record, Chris Doty, Department Director. Going to introduce, make my comments short, but mostly just here to introduce representatives of the Terrebonne Sanitary District. And Tumalo, is Rob on his way? Or is he online?
He might be on.
He might be online. Okay. So, you know, both Terrebonne and Tumalo have been very successful in establishing their districts. And they both benefited, you know, significantly from county investment, ARPA funds in particular, to really get the districts going, get mission, vision, and plans kind of put in place as how they can get a sanitary sewer in those communities that need it somewhat desperately. And so in the waiting kind of moments of ARPA funding and other, you know, funding that might be available, kind of asked that they and then coming back to us, hey, we have a little bit more need here to get us to a better place before other funds show up. I thought it might be a good opportunity to have them update the board on the status of their districts, and then attached in the staff report is a request for additional funding for board consideration. Just again, as I mentioned, as another opportunity for investment, kind of as before, you know, some of these funds probably go away. Hopefully forever. Hopefully we don't have a ARPA 2, right? Yeah. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and introduce Tim Brown, Terrebonne Sanitary District. You all probably know Linda Swearingen, been part of the consultant team, and then Ryan Rudnick as well. I'll sit down and kind of pass the mic to these folks.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
Come on up, Ryan. All right. You can have either. So again, Tim Brown for the record, resident of the Terrebonne Sewer District. So first of all, acknowledging obviously you guys' support in the past and hopefully ongoing, but we've been very appreciative of all your support. Getting a new governmental agency going is a challenge, first one for me. So thank you to all you. Additionally, Mr. Doty. So I'll just kind of paraphrase what you already have in your packets and stuff, and we can certainly ask or answer questions as you have them. But we've made some significant strides in getting the Terrebonne District going, and I know you know there's a great need. There's a lot of community up there that could be utilized for housing and supported existing failing systems, which are a big concern in that area. So at this point, we've received additional 100 requests for annexation to our district above and beyond what our district originally boundary was. We are currently working with the DEQ on a clean water state revolving fund loan for the construction of the project. Of that loan, $2 million of it hopefully be forgiven. And we're additionally looking at $1 million community project grant funding, thanks to HR 8998 and Representative Lori Chavez DeReamer. So we're on board for that, hopefully. Sounds like a lot of money, and I know you guys deal with much bigger pocketbooks than we are. It never is enough money. So ODOT at this point has awarded the project, and they're going through with the installation of water and our sewer projects along 97. And they've been installing that. There have hit a few hiccups, but they're still moving forward. And we're currently working with Ryan and his group to get the final design and getting our system ready to be built. And so we're at a critical phase at the moment, trying to get our project up and ready to be bid in conjunction with the city of Redmond, who's hopefully going to be up and ready to go in the 2027 era. And so we want to be able to be ready to go to connect. We unfortunately have kind of come to the end of our checkbook at this point, and we're kind of waiting on the funds to be granted for our loan and also to get moved forward. So we've had a number of hurdles that we've overcome to the date, and we feel like we can get pretty well to the finish line of being ready to take on a loan and being an independent group. But we're hoping to see if we can secure some additional funding from you guys through the ARPA funds, requesting 75,000, which should get us to design completion, ready for bid, and basically we're ready to go as soon as we have our loan amount. So that's the short list. If you have questions or concerns or want to explore more conversation, I'm more than happy to, or we can provide more conversation. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Tim, for coming today. We
Okay.
actually had a meeting this morning with our finance regarding ARPA funding.
Okay.
And of course, they said we could do what we wanted to today, but we were actually, like it was suggested that we perhaps should look at everything, and we are coming back a week from Wednesday
Okay.
on our agenda where we will be going through ARPA. There are some things that are going back and forth right at
Sure.
the moment, some things that, a few dollars have been returned. And, then we've had some new requests, but in your letter, you actually say 35,000 is really what's critical. at
That
this
is the
point.
minimum. That gets us to a point where we've got parametrics paid off, but we don't actually have the final design plans at that point. So, or no, that gets us to that point. Was that correct?
That was
Maybe you could
position
define
the
that a little
district
bit better.
for the Clean Water State Revolving Funding next year. But wouldn't result in plans for DEQ review and bid documents.
So kind of, it gets us a lot closer, but not quite to the point of independence, I guess I would say.
One question I have is,
Sure, please.
if we could offer you a $75,000 loan on top of what you're already
Mhm.
planning on financing, would that be of interest?
It's anything's of interest, you bet.
I mean,
We need,
not gonna charge you, like bank
yeah,
interest rates.
No, we would
but
definitely
I
explore
mean, that is, it's really difficult because, and I mean, we're talking about ARPA as if there's actually funds available,
Okay.
but we do not have $100,000 that is not allocated already.
Okay,
So we would, to honor, to fully honor these requests, we would have to take money back from
Sure.
projects that we've already committed to.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't feel very good about. I mean,
understand.
I am so excited about your project. I am so excited about what the county's role in supporting. I am so excited about the energy in the communities that has brought these districts together. But it's you're asking for money that we don't have.
sure.
So and I'll want to talk to finance about that
Yeah.
as well, but I mean, if there was a way that we could essentially loan you the money that you need right now, but not cut into other ARPA projects, that would be my preference on how to proceed with this.
We are willing to look at anything, so yes, we would definitely encourage and or appreciate these sort of offers like that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the district's ability to repay loans is limited in the first couple of years. I mean, there's no ratepayers just yet, but once SDC revenues come on, there's some flexibility to pay it off at that point or over time.
And I do think with the planning grant that they've applied for, and Tumalo's in a similar position. We've applied for some planning grant money that we would be able then to retroactively pay back for some expenses. So I think that would be, possibly, a way we could do that with actually both Tumalo and Terrebonne. Unfortunately, in the case of Terrebonne, we've had to deal with a few challenges that we have not faced in Tumalo or in some of the other projects I've dealt with, where there's been a concerted effort by some individuals in the community to spread some quite frankly, misinformation. That's what it is. And so that's eaten into a lot of time and money. But the fact remains, this project's going to happen. And all you have to do is look at the 100 annexation applications that have come in to say, wow. And the person responsible for a lot of those applications was the gentleman that was opposed to this project originally, that took it to an election. So I think that speaks well of what's happening, but of course, we still have a few folks that, and it's not very many, it's a handful, that are making it a little bit more difficult than it needs to be. But this project's gonna happen, and we've met with the school district, and they're excited about hooking up in both Tumalo and Terrebonne. Both have a need for it. So I think we could, in both projects, work that out. Now, the one thing I would say about Tumalo, and Rob's not here, is they're not as far along as Terrebonne. I mean, they'll be sworn in January, but the good news is when they're sworn in January, their meeting will consist of bringing it up to date in Terrebonne in a matter of hours. I mean, they're gonna adopt everything, and we'll be able to move ahead. Now, the difference engineering wise is, the engineering was limited to the formation of the district. And I think there's some confusion in the public, and not very many folks in the public. Most folks know that there has not been a decision made about exactly what type of system is going to be used, where it's going to go, and how it's going to be put together. So the engineering will start once that the board is constituted, and they discuss which direction do they want to go. Where Terrebonne, you know, that ship sailed. They're just finalizing documents so they can move ahead with going out to bid.
Yeah.
But that's the good news. I mean, Tumalo we've been fortunate in Tumalo in that the board members all live there. That makes a big difference. And it's a smaller community, and it has a river. There's more concern that something very terrible could happen to the river with sewers. So both have been good projects, and both are going to happen. And at the end of the day, you can be thankful, and all three of you should be thanked to encouraging, number one, these communities to move forward, and then funding them, because they would not have happened without you guys' help. So thank you very much.
So, yeah, I support both of these. I'm thinking that, maybe we can do that $25,000 or $35,000 for Terrebonne and make the rest alone if you really need it. So maybe I'm thinking of splitting it there. But also, yeah, Ryan and I were able to sit down with the Water District Board members and just give them some facts, because we got hit many times real fast about, you're gonna do what to our water system? It's like, well, 100 feet for a pressurized line. So as I say, thanks for providing some facts. That worked out real well. I texted him, he said, who is this? I said, this is Commissioner Clone. We didn't have those numbers, but that worked out really well. And yeah, I'm supportive of making it easy to get to the next step, right? So to say maybe the three of us are gonna go a little different just because of the financial situation, but yeah, let's get there. Let's make sure it's happening. I also heard from somebody else that said they had to change a bunch of light bulbs because of the rock hammering up and down 11th Avenue, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah, so there was a complaint about broke just filaments, not the bulbs breaking, but the lights failing, I think. So yeah, there is an effect. It's just about the action that's happening in town right now. So in fact, yeah, is there a little status about the ODOT project and the alignment with it?
Ryan, you can probably better.
Yeah, what's the date on that?
Yeah, or Chris yeah, the lines are being installed, so there are sewer lines already in the ground. They've been using a rock saw. I've seen some photos down 11th Street. As far as beyond that, I'm not sure where they're at the moment.
So they're not blasting.
they're sawing. for the
Yeah,
wood line.
correct.
I'm just saying, I heard bulbs were failing.
Which is the beauty of a pressure sewer system, is
Yeah.
that you don't need deep trench. And so project itself is kind of off to a little bit of a rocky start, no pun intended. Just with utilities and the amount of coordination that has to take place. You know, the good news is we have $1 million grant that we have to spend by the end of this calendar year. I think the coronavirus relief funds.
Yep.
From Senator Bonham's office, but we're on track to do that. But it'll be close, but the project's, it's moving along.
So there's gonna be coordination by our road department for the road, off highway road portion. And the sewer projects happening and the ODOT
Yeah,
projects.
it's actually all one project that
Oh, okay.
ODOT is delivering.
Okay,
And so, yeah, you go on the website, kind of track the progress. It's a 2026 completion. I don't know the exact month, I'm guessing early in 2026 for the whole thing. But because the sewer portion of it had to be spent by the end of this calendar year, that's being prioritized and delivered.
so that is part of the ODOT's project, or so the sewer system was saying, we need a line down this road. And ODOT said, okay, it's part of our project now.
Yeah, so we,
We're not happy with us coming back in and cutting the pavement after the fact, so.
Oh, yeah,
you know,
yeah,
all that stuff.
we know that.
so.
that was all part of the coordination.
But it's a project under ODOT, not a
Right.
side by
Yeah.
side project.
That we put over
Yeah.
$11 million.
Yeah, right here, I know, yeah.
Only 11, yes,
Lot of
Only,
yes, that, well, it's only been on.
But
the
I've been
books.
letting people know that, yeah, that was Deschutes County leaning into a named project by the last House bill. And making sure, okay, what do we need to get this going? Because if it would have slipped past about now, talking about the next transportation package, it might have got lost for another 10 years.
So I do have a question about the Murray Smith contract. Apparently they disengaged, their group fell apart. And I'm wondering, did their disengagement leave us a bit short?
No, I mean, Murray Smith's contract was to do a feasibility study, basically to show proof of concept. Can a sewer system be constructed in this community? What would the rates look like? Rough costs, is it feasible or not? And so their study did answer that question and provided, several different opportunities for system composition and then effluent disposal, which is the big thing in the sewer system. This group is then kind of formed around that, coalesced around it. A group of folks that basically said, we want to move this forward, don't want it just to be a study that sits there, which was great. And initially it was the water district and now it's kind of expanded a little bit with some folks. And so, the next investment is just kind of refining that feasibility, kind of trying to hone in on the proper path, taking a look at just refining some of those concepts that were presented in that feasibility. So there's still lots of options and opportunity in that community. There's an existing system that's working that potentially could be expanded, so a little more work on that. And other opportunities for effluent disposal based on properties that property owners have shown interest to possibly accept that effluent for the community. So to answer your question, no, that study was completed. It was we did change horses midstream because Murray Smith was bought out by another company. But we're basically just building upon that.
But it was in 22 that contract was signed, and so we ended up paying $49,000 more than the original contract in 19. Was the contract for Terrebonne signed in 19 or 20? After Tom Anderson finally agreed to do the third study. Do you remember, Ryan? It was after I was in office, because I remember it was gonna be the third study and I begged and we got it done. But I mean, I'm just going I'm looking at these numbers and I'm going, well, we actually spent $49,000 more on the Murray Smith contract. I just wondered if there's something special we got out of that.
So yeah, you're talking about the two different contracts. So we
Right.
had $100,000 in Terrebonne. And that was to update an existing study. We had a $149,000 contract in Tumalo, and that was to start fresh.
Okay, but the other studies were ancient, weren't they? One from 1984s. Yeah.
Correct.
They
Yeah.
were ancient studies. Not
For
for Terrebonne.
that was
Yeah.
during my time.
Well, Linda, let's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
when you didn't meet in this building, isn't that what you just said?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, no.
okay.
That took place during my era.
And what happened? What
Well, we
happened?
looked at it and we talked to the community and the community said,
Nothing.
we don't want a sewer. And so timing was, everything's about timing. And, yeah,
Their systems haven't failed yet.
not enough of them, not
Right.
enough of them had failed. They were failing.
But Chris, the Murray Smith work, that was on the Tumalo system.
Yeah.
Right, and there weren't any earlier feasibility studies for that.
No, nothing that we were
No.
building on.
So, sounds like it's something, I don't know. Come back. Should we have a motion today then to come back? Or should we can make that motion at that time on the following Wednesday, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's no pressure to make
I
a
know,
decision.
but we could, Robert said we could if we wanted to, so. Right,
So before we wrap this up, if Rob Fish is on the line, then we should let him talk and.
He texted me, said he's coming over now.
Oh,
He might-
okay,
He might show up a bit late.
all
he
right.
does have
Sounds like-
a really good explanation here on his letter
Yeah.
of everything.
Yeah, he's been wonderful, absolutely wonderful. The other thing that Rob brings to the table is he's a board member with the water district and he's lived in the community since the 1960s.
Yes,
So been great to have him and his sister on board.
No, it's pretty amazing what a couple of long-term community members can do. In a small community like that to get people warmed up to a concept that many people were very, very concerned about and suspicious of.
Yeah.
We heard quite a lot.
Yeah, you
From
hear some of
from the Tumalo community.
So,
So Chris, my last question is, if we are. If that estimates of how much ARPA funding is non-allocated are accurate.
mhm.
Is built a potential backstop for granting these?
Sure, yeah, I would say yes, simply because Built has already been a significant funding
Yeah.
source for Terrebonne.
Yeah.
And
Like
so,
almost $1 million.
yeah, probably over that, considering item one there was partially funded with Built as well. I failed to mention that. So, again, that's payment in lieu of taxes. It's to be used for general government purposes. Road department has kind of explained why it's, the board had previously, generously allocated that to the road department budget. But it's not constitutionally restricted funding, like road funds are. So the board can say, tap into the bill to pay, for, these additional contracts.
So tell me about the 100 hookups that are coming. Is that gonna be without STCs or with STCs? Or
They'll all do everything, everybody's paying STCs,
So, yeah.
nobody's getting a
So
free
there's
ride.
not like cause this, I think was happening in the Pine, just there's like a offer at some point, if you sign up now, there's no STC. But that's not happening for anybody.
We have not done anything
Yeah,
like that,
there's
yeah.
seven there, okay.
The 100 is 100 annexations, which
Yeah, yeah.
people want to be in the district, not necessarily hook up directly.
And
so how
then,
much is that gonna be, the SDCs for like a
How
single
much?
family home?
There's a whole framework of assumptions and numbers that play into that, number of connections, the loan rates,
Grants.
construction costs, extended grants, but based on the framework that we have. And basically an estimated $6 million cost, 3 million of that being grant, so roughly 3 million in loan. And DEQ clean water, straight clean water state revolving fund rates, which are pretty good. Around 2% with the annual fee. It's looking like with 160 EDUs, monthly rates would be approximately $85 a month. And SDC fees would be roughly 7,500. Subject to change, up and down, say 10%, depending on what happens, but that's the ballpark of where things are. Based on the latest information.
And if we end up getting the folks that I think we're gonna get, when it's all said and done, we could be over 200, 250 EDUs, which would lower that monthly fee down to even lower than some of the other areas around here. SDCs aren't gonna change that much.
Probably not.
They're probably.
So
gonna be-
$7,500 SDC?
Yeah, and you know, that's commensurate with what's happening in Central Oregon, so they're still gonna have a pretty good deal there.
And regarding the early connection incentive, that's something the board.
Yeah, we haven't made a decision on that yet.
It's in a resolution, the way to incentivize early hookups
Yeah.
and participation.
And then the only other observation, down in Lapine, before there was a city, there was a water and sewer district. And it got, before they incorporated, it got to be a point where same group of people were sitting at the table, they convene as the water district, closed the meeting and convene as the sewer district. Cause they could never get to one entity there, so just think about, and I'm not speaking for you, I'm speaking to the world here, but think about that possibility. Maybe at some point, just bring the two together if you're not gonna incorporate, sure, cause it was just overhead, two districts that were in the same building, kind of doing their public's work, so.
Oh, Robert.
Mr. Fish has arrived.
So that was no critique other than let's work together.
Love it.
Sorry I'm late. I was unattended today.
Yeah.
So left to my own, I'm nothing but trouble.
Uh-oh.
I was left unattended. My wife's out of town today. So,
Let's.
He wasn't watching.
yeah, so I was busy doing good things, but got to be here.
Did you get hit by the ODOT pop-up tent the other day too?
No,
Oh, cause you have something on your nose.
oh, that's from burning stuff,
Okay,
so.
It's just dirt.
Yeah.
cause we're,
Clean dirt.
some of us are never going to another ODOT dedicated ceremony again.
Yeah.
Or without a hard hat.
With a helmet on, now that would now too there.
Rob, we pretty much have talked everything out, but I had asked to make sure that you had a chance to just say anything you wanted to say.
I guess about the only thing I have to say is we seem to have lots of all that good stuff I said there. I'll say something different. You don't have that.
We read it.
We've got good community support, even outside of the community. I've been to several events with, the wastewater high strength conference that we just had over up in Vancouver, Washington. And all the regulators that I talked to and all of the other people engaged in that industry were really excited for what we're doing, being proactive. Instead of waiting until, oh, there's a terrible problem and we've got to fix it right now. We're working ahead, so we have more options. We can talk to different groups and bring more people in together, more groups. So that we can have a good system and a good project that doesn't alienate many people. Some people are gonna feel alienated no matter what happens, but we're gonna try to bring as many people in as we can and discuss things. And so since we don't have a dead timeline, we have the ability to wait just a little bit and to work other options and try to get things as good for everybody as we can.
Great, yeah, so we're
Aren't you glad you got here?
I am.
We're gonna talk about this in a week and a half, so this was just setting the table for a
Okay.
larger ARPA discussion, but I wanted to, thanks for joining us.
Okay.
Ran right down here
Yeah,
for 5 minutes.
Yeah, thanks for holding the gate for me.
Thank you, board.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is item number 2, a public hearing regarding Energy Wise Services protest. So, do I open the public hearing this instant or do I wait till they do their? Yes, staff, go ahead. I just need to. Great, thank you so much for joining us.
So for the record, Lee Randall, facilities director.
Wait, Powderly Coming Group owners, right?
Eric Nielsen, facilities department, capital improvement manager.
Stephanie Marshall, Assistant Legal Counsel, Senior Assistant Legal Counsel.
Greenberg, energy wise.
Thank you.
And so for our portion, I'll just get us started. Eric is going to provide an overview of the process and of the background of the project. And then Stephanie will provide some overview of the legal requirements of the ORS as it relates to the process that we underwent for design build RFP, as well as the current process of the protest to the notice of intent to award. So with that, I'll turn it over to Eric to discuss an overview and background of the process.
Okay, so as you know, the solar PV project was initiated as part of the courthouse expansion project. It's to meet a requirement to spend 1.5% of the total contract price on green energy technology or an alternative. So in July of 2023, the facilities worked with the Mayfield Engineering to complete a feasibility study for a PV system at the Fair and Expo Center. And that feasibility study was included as in the RFP and served as the basis of design system for the proposals that we received for design build services. On August 7th, 2024, the Facilities Department issued a publicly advertised RFP for a design build contractor for the solar PV project. And the RFP was qualifications based, and the selections process was not solely to evaluate individually proposed designs, nor was it intended to evaluate the final design of the system or evaluate a bid for the system. The process was intended to evaluate proposals for the most qualified contractor to provide the design build services. And then following award of the contract, we would initiate the design process. So after the proposal was issued, there was a 2-week period until August 21st, 2024 for proposers to review the RFP and submit questions or clarifications. Following the period, addendum was issued on the 28th of August, 2024, and proposals were due on September 11th, 2024. So we received 7 formal proposals, and the proposals were then reviewed by a scoring committee made up of 4 representatives from the Fair and Expo Center and the Facilities Department. Proposals were evaluated based on the following qualifications-based categories, ranked by their total score out of 100 points. So first, there was a cover letter, which had no points. It was pass-fail. Second was the proposed responders project team, 20 points. Their approach to provide solar and PV related services, 20 points. Customer service, 20 points. Related project experience, 15 points. References, 10 points. Billing rates and fee schedule, 15 points. And then finally, a signature sheet, which was also a pass-fail. So E2 Solar received the highest scoring by the committee, and during the evaluation process and is being recommended for award of the contract, included a copy of the scoring summary and in the agenda packet. And on October 2nd, 2024, the board considered the recommendation of the scoring committee a regularly scheduled meeting and voted unanimously to approve document number 2024-811, the notice of intent to award contract to E2 Solar. And thereafter, on October 4th, 2024, Hughes County received a formal protest from Energy Wise Services of the notice of intent to award the contract to E2 Solar.
And that brings us to today. Stephanie Marshall again, Senior Assistant Legal Counsel. What is before you today is a hearing on the protest that was submitted of the notice of intent to award contract to E2 Solar. And the criteria I have summarized. I want to direct your attention to ORS 279B-410, which requires which allows a bidder or proposer to protest the award of a contract or notice of intent to award. The bidder or proposer has the burden of proof to establish that they are adversely affected because they would be eligible to be awarded the public contract. And they must establish that the reason for the protest is that one of the 4 A, B, C, or D. A, all lower bids or higher ranked proposals are non-responsive. Or B, the contracting agency has failed to conduct the evaluations in accordance with the criteria or processes identified in the solicitation materials. That's the request for proposal. C, the contracting agency, that's the county, has abused its discretion in rejecting the protester's bid or proposal as non-responsive. That was not what the board did. The board did not reject it as non-responsive. Or D, the contracting agency's evaluation of bids or proposals or the contracting agency's subsequent determination of award is otherwise in violation of this chapter, being ORS 279B. Or ORS 279A. And the bidder or proposer did submit the protest to the contracting agency in writing. That protester will have the opportunity to present their protest subsequently here. I did also want to call to the board's attention the fact that ORS 279B 0608 provides discretion to the board in evaluating proposals submitted in response to an RFP, specifically calling out subsection A, an award or awards based solely on the ranking of proposals. Staff and I will be available for further questions after the protesters' presentation today. And
Okay.
any questions?
Are there any questions? Otherwise, I can open up the public hearing. No questions? Okay, great. So let's open up the public hearing and now hear from Energy Water Assistance, I believe. And normally, are we going to allow them 30 minutes,
That's up
10
to-
minutes?
That's up to you.
10 minutes, is 10 minutes adequate?
As quick as I
Okay.
can be and ask questions,
Okay. Thank
Appreciate your time. I'm not a lawyer, certainly never protested a bid. I frankly don't do that many bids. I thought there's a lot of things that were slightly unusual in this bid. You
Oh, do
had,
you want to identify yourself? too,
oh,
please?
Peter Greenberg, Energy Wise Services. I was one of the bidders.
Okay.
First, the Mayfield report, most of what he said that you didn't follow in the bid. He suggested 480 watt panels, the bid said 430 watts or less. He suggested a specific inverter. The inverter didn't meet the requirements of the bid, which was a 25-year warranty, which is basically one or two inverters. And then the solar panels, you had to have ones that had a 90% output with a specific depreciation rate per year and a 25-year warranty, which you can count on less than one hand. So you're having a design build bid, which basically want the experience of the contractors who are in this business to tell you what they would recommend. But the restrictions were so tight that nobody except the winning bidder put in there the specific inverter that had a 25-year warranty. And the solar panels that they put in, the company, it's a Swiss company, their stock was $179. Beginning year, it's $1.50 now. They're damn near bankrupt. And whether you got a 25-year warranty or a 100-year warranty, if the company's out of business in a year, it doesn't really matter. So I think from the beginning that the design build part really wasn't in there because the restrictions are so tight. And then the scoring method, first of all, it wasn't really explained how the points were came about, and most of them really didn't matter. I mean, the approach was 20 points. I got, I don't know, 15 points. The winner got, let's say, 18 points. And my approach was better. I mean, my approach is basically to offer simple materials that are going to last the longest time, that you can replace easily. The microinverters that were essentially spec'd in, you can have 800 pieces of electronics under every solar panel and expect those to last 25 years. And let's just say in year 20 or year 15, they start to fail and the company's out of business. Everything's proprietary. You have to start all over again. You have to pull up 800 solar panels, replace all the electronics. And the string inverter that I recommended, there's multiple companies that make those. There's nothing underneath the solar panels. I offered a longer warrant, I offered a downtime warranty. If something didn't work, I would pay for the difference in price. So I think you looked at various things, but you really didn't look at the value of what you're getting. And if you, and then also the solar panels and the racking that I offered qualify for an additional 10% federal Inflation Reduction Act money, $65,000 basically, which nobody else offered. And then you stated that you wanted the largest system possible. I was 20% larger than the largest system. And that wasn't looked at all. So when you look at the larger system, the more money, you're looking at about $350,000 in difference over 25 years at a 4% rate increase a year, which we wish we would have had in the last couple of years. It's kind of 27%. So
350,000 of lost
well,
revenue.
you
energy generation
would
or
earn
what?
about, I have a spreadsheet, but actually I had a wrong number. I had a 10.4 cents a kilowatt hour, but it's really 10.57. And at 10.57, looking at the depreciation, the solar panels I recommended, which are made in the US, not Switzerland, like the other guy. And then you look at his panels, there's a $280,000 difference in energy money over the years, and then
Produced. That's
produced
the value
at
of that.
4% inflation per year of Pacific Power rate, which was a number in there, which, you know, who knows what that number will be. And then if you add in the extra 10% from the federal reduction, basically you're gonna get 30% of your money back through the feds. But you could get 40% if you use the right materials, which I was the only one to put those in there. So there's $346,000 of difference. With my system, I also offered a spare 60 kilowatt inverter, an uptime guarantee, 10 years of washing the panels. I put in 45,000 panels, so I'm not quite sure how I would get less points in experience. You know, I just think all the scoring was very subjective. They don't explain how they got to the points, and they really didn't look at the value of the project. What you really should care about is system will pass the building inspection, and the contractor is in good standing with the Energy Trust of Oregon and has done enough contracts. And whether I got 2 electricians or 5 electricians, you know, the project team really doesn't matter. And then one odd thing was the billing rates and fee schedule. How do you grade somebody on a billing rate with a fixed price contract? It doesn't make sense. You know, whether I pay a bookkeeper $30 an hour or $35 an hour, there's nothing in the bid that's saying if I pay people more or pay people less, I'll get more or less points. All I put in there was that at a minimum, I'm going to pay prevailing wages. And if you look at the winning bid, he actually has a number that's less than prevailing wages for the solar installer. So I mean, that should sort of throw out the bid right there. So that's pretty much in a nutshell. I think the materials that were picked were probably well-meaning. You got a high warranty, but the company goes out of business, it's meaningless. And I don't know of anybody in the state that would put 800 pieces of electronics that they don't have to underneath solar panels. Almost everybody uses string inverters. So with that, you have any questions?
In your letter and your presentation just now, I don't think I have any questions. I think I'll have the questions for staff essentially to determine whether some of the things that you mentioned rise to the level of, you know, the competitor was non-responsive, or our solicitation was unnecessarily restrictive or legally flawed in certain ways. But
you know, one other interesting thing is I'm the only person that suggested or had in there putting solar panels on the flat part of the roof, which I've done in many, many buildings. And I mentioned that it's kind of a waste of everybody's time, but typically you're looking at about 4.5 pounds a square foot. If the roof can hold 3 pounds a square foot, you're really just wasting time and really should have had an engineer saying, you know, our roof can hold X amount of pounds of extra weight. And it was said that that would be looked at after the award was given out. So I put that, if the roof couldn't hold it, I would put it in any other building. And you really should have looked at more buildings. Kind of silly for me to say it, but in Ryan Mayfield, I know the guy, in his proposal feasibility study, he said, you know, you have an existing solar system in a building which is at a lower rate. And, you know, why would you want to put solar on a building with a lower rate when you have these other buildings at a higher rate? Well, that lower rate 2 years ago is what the higher rate is now. But the rates have gone up. And you got, I don't know, 10 other bills with the higher rate. And I had asked for the electric bills of all the buildings, and I got just the total for all the buildings. I got a breakdown for 2 buildings, and I looked at, one was the South Sister and one was the Bull Barn or something like that. And even though they're the exact same rate schedule, there's a 5% difference in the actual kilowatt hours, the rate per kilowatt hour you're paying because of the demand charge. So, you know, without a really more nuanced look at it, you could be doing the exact same solar but saving more money in different locations. But we were only allowed to look at 2 buildings, which really didn't make sense to me. So you really could have gotten more for your money. I think you could have got a lot more for your money. And that wasn't looked at all.
So the bidding process is kind of the law of how we bid and get bids back or whatever. And it sounds like you're kind of debating the credentials of the choices of engineering wise. I'm just trying to maybe even help you get back to
Yeah.
protesting the bid is what we're doing here.
Well, you know, first of all, the winning bidder wasn't paying prevailing wages in their wage thing. I don't think the approach of looking at points and not explaining how you get to the points really makes sense. I don't think some of the categories make sense. I mean, it doesn't really matter what somebody's billing rate is when you're looking at a fixed price project that you have to pay prevailing wage. And you didn't really look at the viability of the products that you're putting in there. And then I'm sure I differ from your legal counsel, but the statute I found, which was mentioned in the bid, for the 7 days of basically it said you get 7 days to protest a bid from when you signed the letter of intent. And I said, well, how do I know what to? I mean, usually in a bid, you have a bid opening, everybody looks at it, boom, done. You know, one person's X amount, one person's Y. With this, when you're bidding on a fixed amount, you know, it takes time to go over stuff. But they said, well, you have to fill out a request for whatever. And I got that 7 days and 4 days after the intent was signed. So if I had followed that, I wouldn't be able to protest. And the only way I knew to protest was I watched the meeting and somebody kind of mumbled that it was 310 kilowatts and I'm 356, which seems bigger right there. But one of the statutes says that once the notice of intent is signed, then you're supposed to open the bids. And, you know, I got back that, well, we don't do it that way since this falls under an engineering, road surveying, or some other type of project, but it seems like it's pretty clear in the statutes that once you sign that letter of intent, you should open the bids up. And it's really no skin off anybody's back to open them. And so that's pretty much it.
Yeah, thanks for participating.
Yeah. I don't know if it'll do any good, but I think if, you know, contractors really know what they're doing more than anybody else in that specific field. And with their design, the intent of a design build bid is, what do you think would be best? And you know, I could have picked a solar panel that's 88.7% output in 25 years. That's 70 grand cheaper, literally. And put in 70,000 more product for you. But that wasn't a choice in this bid. It should have been.
So I do have a question about your letter.
Yeah,
You said the Meyer Burger solar panels that are in the winners, they do have a very high output after 25 years.
yeah,
But then you say, unfortunately, the company is close to bankruptcy.
right.
Well, that seems kind of incongruous, like, okay, they're gonna last longer than 25 years, but the company's gonna go bankrupt. Are you just referring to a few that might fail?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, they all, none might fail. I'm just saying that they have a great warranty. I mean, they're, you know, they got a 25-year warranty. But if the company's not around, the warranty means nothing. And
Right.
the company
But you
is
said
very
they have a
close.
high output, so I'm thinking
They-
like they're really good, they're top of the line, but the company's failing.
Right, well, the difference between top of the line and bottom of the line is very small. I mean, the top of the line might be 92% output in 25 years. The average are 85%. But there's a huge price difference. But if the, you know, so I don't really even look at warranties because solar companies definitely come and go. But, you know, that was one of the criteria, was a 25-year warranty, 90% output in year 25, and no less than 0.02% depreciation per year, which, you know, you limit it to like 2 solar panels. And if you had opened that up, you know, it might have been 400 kilowatts, which might have saved you more money over the long run. Than, you know, being very specific about what solar panel you want. Hate to scare you, but let me show you one more thing. This week took off a job last week that had been installed for 10 years. Things do fail. And personally, I just don't trust things that long warranty. This is a very reputable company. And this is an example of what electronics underneath solar panels could look like. You know, you might have perfect luck and nothing goes bad, but you might not. And if Enphase, which is the microinverter company, fails, it'll cost you 200 grand to take up 800 solar panels, get rid of all those, and then go to a system like I'm suggesting, which is, you know, competitors that you can use multiple inverters. Used to be a firefighter. So. And I had a fire in a solar system from a safety device that failed. You know, it's very insignificant. The problems with solar, but things do happen. And the more electronics you put in, the more problems you're gonna have. Okay.
All right.
So,
You're not done, you're gonna have a time to rebut, but
Oh,
I'll
okay.
just
Yeah,
say, you know, we have certain legal criteria that
Sure.
we need to evaluate your protest on, and we will do that.
Okay. Well, thank you. Any questions? Let me know.
Okay, is there anyone else in the room that is going to be making public comments at this time? Anyone online, Brenda? No. No raised hands online? Okay, so. I don't know what. I don't know, Peter, if there's anything.
I think that's it.
All right, okay.
Hey, appreciate it.
Can I do some questions for staff?
Okay, so should we close the public hearing then and ask questions to staff?
You may want to ask questions of staff and then give them an opportunity to provide.
Okay, great. That would be
Out
fair.
for those questions.
All right, please stay, Peter. Okay, staff. Got questions for you.
We may need a few more seats.
Oh, sure.
And it's possible that some of these questions I'm gonna ask, it's possible some of these questions are like, we need to get back to you on that. If you don't have the answer right off the top of your head.
So I think to start, it may be good if Stephanie, if you could just address the the request for information. Because we did receive a request for information, and reply to Mr. Greenberg's request for the information that he requested, so.
For the competing bids.
Correct.
That's correct, yes. Stephanie Marshall, Senior Assistant Legal Counsel. The request for the information that was, and I was taking notes here as well. So, there was a 7-day, open up the bids, and the implication was that this was a design build bid and there was not enough time. However, the information pursuant to a design build bid was provided to the protester within that time, was not withheld as pursuant to other statutory statutes, sorry. It was not withheld from him. It was provided to him in time for him to prepare his presentation and his protest, and for the consideration by the board of full information on the protest.
I'm not gonna do a good job of repeating it, but there was an assertion that we ran kind of bidding rules and notification and release rules for a certain kind of project, but that this should be considered a different kind of projects. I mean, it's
And so upon review, after the request for information was submitted, Stephanie reviewed those legal requirements, and legal counsel made a determination that the proposal should be released. And so they were. So I just wanted to touch base on a few kind of high level, again, background pieces of information. So first, this was a design build approach. And so we were seeking proposals, not bids per se. And as part of those proposals, scoring criteria was clearly stated in Exhibit E, which provided points per category on how they were going to be scored. This is a tried and true approach for a qualification-based selection process that we've used many times with similar scoring criteria. So those scoring categories and criteria sometimes are adjusted based on the project or based on the services that the county's seeking, but it's a standard approach for a qualifications-based selection. The second part is that under the approach section of the request for proposals that's scored at 20 points. And I think the thing to remember is that's the beginning of the design, not the final design. And so it's sort of equivalent to a concept if we were to build a building. And part of, in the same way that we provide a concept to a design team as part of this process, we provided a basis of a design that was prepared as part of a feasibility study. The costs at a conceptual stage are preliminary. Technology is changing, which is one of the reasons to use a design build process, knowing that in the amount of time that we work through both the feasibility study, releasing the RFP, going through the selection process, time will pass, there could be improvements in design. And so once we have that design build contractor on board, that's where the true design of the project begins. And you have the opportunity to use a substitution request process to propose other types of technology. That opportunity is also available throughout the RFP response time period. So we do have a 2-week period for questions where that basis of design could be challenged, or as part of the approach, the proposer could offer alternate approaches. And ultimately, that's what the scoring committee is scoring, just that portion, those 20 points against that alternate approach. As we look for a firm that's going to be a partner in a design project, that's why there's more than one category. There's 6 categories that they're evaluated against, again, with those scoring categories being provided in Exhibit E of the RFP as it's originally released.
So we, I mean, if if there's been discussion about, this bid had this inverter in it, some real specific, things were pieces of equipment were specified, there's that, it's almost expected that after the award of a contract based on qualifications, we're not selecting a system or a design, we're selecting a contractor, a qualified contractor, that you would almost expect it that they would come back with a different design than what was in the proposal.
Exactly. It's any design process is going to have a series of decision points throughout the process. And as you reach those decision points, oftentimes the end design is different, could have different components. Building design is a good example. We start with a square footage and a size component and a list of the outcomes that we're looking for. And then throughout that process, then to use the analogy of a building design, an architect's going to propose finishes and HVAC equipment and lighting and all of those things that make up the building. I would expect that a solar proposal design project would take a similar pathway. And then I think the other thing to touch base on related to the wage component, really we use that cost component as a way to get information about design fees. So BOLI prevailing wage only applies to the installation cost. On a design build contract, there are going to be other costs involved as well. And so it's really that piece of information that 15 points of the score, that 15% is seeking to elicit in the proposal process.
So the wages specified in the winning bid are not violating prevailing wage standards?
Well, our legal counsel could speak more clearly to that, but in my view, one, the wages that are relevant to a project are the ones at the time that the project is bid out. And so with a design build project, technically we could have 6 to 9 months, a year of bidding out designing the project. So there would be a future point at whatever point those prevailing wages would be at that point at which the contractor solicits subcontractor bids, et cetera. That would be typically the defining date for the BOLI prevailing wages. So I think ultimately the takeaway is that the BOLI prevailing wage, the contractor is going to be required to pay based on the date that the project is bid out potentially. And so to Mr. Greenberg's point, the BOLI wages for install are going to be the same for everyone. But the additional part is, what are the fees for design? What are the additional fees that a contractor may be seeking as part of the contract? And again, it's just 15% of the scoring criteria. And so it may not, their response there may not determine, the outcome of the scoring.
I'm sorry, I'm still not following. So if the concern expressed was that there were workers or people who will be working on the project specified in the proposal, and the concern was that there's workers or people specified in the proposal, and the wage indicated in the proposal was not prevailing wage. Right? I think that's what was being. And so what is your
So
is it or were they or weren't they? I mean, what
if
was
I'm
in the bid?
understanding the point, I think that the number wasn't correct, but there's an assurance that BOLI prevailing wage would be paid. And that number varies, is adjusted every 6 months. So the number that was provided in that particular proposal could have been inaccurate. But that would just be one of the things that the proposal might be scored against. But not a final determination for the entire score.
Okay, so we know that when the work actually gets done, prevailing wage will be paid. But I guess if the question is, did this one proposal get a better score in that category on the proposed rates? Because they gave lower rates than is legal, then, you know, that is a real concern about that proposal.
Just if I may add, so to add on to Lee's point, only the field technicians are subject to the BOLI rates. The rest of the winning firm, the owner of the firm, the designer, project manager in the office, they are not subject to the BOLI rates.
Okay.
So those rates were also given in the proposal and scored against those 15. That makes sense? So when it comes around to actually field guys in the field, putting the stuff on the roof, they have to meet the BOLI rate at that time. And like Lee said, it gets adjusted every 6 months. But between now, starting design now, and to that point where we actually install something, the office staff of the winning firm are not subject to BOLI rates.
So I think
Does that
for
make
me to
sense?
close the loop on your question, whether or not that would be grounds for dismissal of the proposal or for scoring it lower.
Or to say, I mean, to use the criteria that we're waiting for, like, does that make a proposal non-responsive?
I don't think so. I think that's a clerical error that was in the proposal that could be evaluated by the county as a minimal or a mistake that could be accounted for in another way. So I think similarly, there may be other areas of the proposal in a particular scoring category where the scorers saw something differently than the way the proposer did, and but without looking at the specific scores of each proposal, I would be able to answer whether or not or what went into their reasoning to score one higher than the other. But I don't think it would be grounds for this.
You have you have that as well.
Right, so, the detail, as to, yeah, sorry,
So in the RFP, there's a statement that says
yeah,
it's a public project, and it's, so parties understand that the prevailing wage requirements apply to the project, and that for the purposes of prevailing wage requirements, the project is a public works pursuant to ORS 270C. Vendors shall confirm their labor costs for on-site work comply with BOLI requirements for spring 2024. So in the proposal, we specifically related BOLI wages to the on-site work, but as Wayne said, all the office hours are not under BOLI. But whether or not based on what may be a clerical error, that proposal would be determined non-responsive, I think we may have to get back to them. I think the short answer is, I would view it, if as we review them as a facility director, that's not something that I would typically initially take a look at as being non-responsive. Instead, it's something we would clarify with the winning proposer at the time of negotiating the contract.
So I'm reading this and it says that the problem really was that the exhibit C was not included in their proposal. So is that on page 9 of our packet? So is that really what happened to them? And I'm wondering, I really appreciate Peter coming today and doing this presentation, because what do we want to do? We want somebody that's really gonna look at things, and you know what he was saying about using an American product, and we would get a larger, eventually getting the $65,000 back, etc. And the what he was offering, you know, with extra this and 25-year warranty. So I'm wondering, were other bids using that same Swiss product that's gonna be, the company's gonna be going out of business? I mean, I'm just
Yeah,
wondering,
so-
you guys, did you know that? Were you like into that as far as your analysis?
So, I think the first part of that question is, if you think of this in terms of a CMGC contract that's awarded, this is pre-designed. And so, any questions or issues that might arise with the basis of design and the feasibility study, I would fully expect would be vetted and teased out through the design process. So at the stage we're at now in selecting a contractor to do the design build project, we're essentially pre-designed. And so we've put out a basis of design that would be similar to putting out a concept of a building that changes and develops over time through the design process. And part of that process is vetting and determining the viability of each component of each part of the final design. So at this point, I think we're sort of prior to doing all of that homework, but that's certainly a part of the process that will be done going forward through the design process.
But really, they were eliminated because they didn't have Exhibit C.
No, so that's, sorry. So, yeah.
They didn't include Exhibit C, and that was discovered after each individual person on the scoring committee scored all the proposals. We noticed that they didn't include it, and so when we tallied scores, we didn't deem their proposal non-responsive, we just said it was incomplete. We didn't reach out to them because they scored number 6 out of 7, so it wasn't Exhibit C wasn't, it didn't make their proposal non-responsive, we just noted it as an incomplete. Because it was an attachment.
And since nobody noticed that if it wasn't there, it didn't affect their scoring.
No, scores were tallied. And I guess before scores were tallied, Exhibit C wasn't attached, but Exhibit C not being included didn't determine the scoring at all. It's its own category.
That said, it was a requirement of the proposal that wasn't included with the response.
Know a lot more about generators. Yeah,
I-
no, really.
I still have a couple more questions. So, Peter asked a number of questions about, what was required in the RFP. And essentially whether, what was required in the RFP in relation to, what might make sense in terms of equipment choices. And, I was wondering, so my question is, does any of that rise to the level of the solicitation being unnecessarily restricted? Give it away from like looking at the proposals that, and to explore some of the concerns about, our solicitation.
So again, I think there's a couple opportunities for proposers to bring that to light and to offer feedback prior to the due date. And so we have a 2-week period for questions related to the basis of design and really anything related to the RFP that's been issued. So there's, first of all, that period of time. Secondly, within the category of approach, there's the opportunity to propose different approaches. There's the opportunity to write as part of your proposal that you disagree with the basis of design for these reasons, and you would offer this alternate approach. That's also there. And then finally, kind of as the stopgap gap measure, with this being really at the pre-design stage, those alternate approaches, given that someone may score higher in other categories or even in that category and then be the final contractor that's selected. Ultimately, all of those alternate approaches can be explored during the design process.
But there were opportunities for Energy Wise before the proposals were due to call out these concerns and also to in their proposal kind of explicitly call out that, this is these are unnecessary restrictions and here's an alternative approach that's better.
In my view, yes.
And something that I didn't fully understand, but which I had some concerns about was this assertion that the inverter and the panels didn't meet the qualification, meet the they weren't what was specified in the sorry, I wrote notes that I can't read. Basically, that there's like a mismatch between what was specified and what was specified, I think what was specified in the feasibility study and then the RFP. I mean, so is that, am I getting that?
Yeah, and to give you a bit of a
Question.
timeline too, the feasibility study was done early 2023. And so this RFP was sent out late, this year, just a couple months ago. So as Peter had even mentioned, engineering costs, panels, everything is kind of, changed over time and costs have actually gone down. When that feasibility study was done, Mayfield Engineering at the time thought that for the amount of money that we had in the budget to do this, they thought about 190 kW would be the max system. Over the next year and a half till we got to the actual RFP stage, obviously the industry has changed. And between the 7 proposals that we received, it ranged from 210 kW to Peter being the highest was 356. So kind of the average was right in there at about 310, which was the winning proposal. But go back, I think specifically to answer your question.
Yeah, so the RFP didn't follow the specs of the
Right.
feasibility study.
But in that 2-week period for them to ask questions and then the addendum was issued to answer those questions.
Right.
We did specify that if you have alternate systems that you would like to propose that are different than the basis of design, please do so, in your proposals, and they can be evaluated in that one section of approach for 20 points.
Because this actually did come up during the 2-week period and you guys kind of
Correct.
specifically issued an addendum.
Yeah, there was several questions from all the different firms and we answered each one of those questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I don't have any.
Mr. Chabot, do you have any more?
No more questions. I'm ready to deliberate.
He does have time for rebuttal. Peter, would you like time?
Yeah, I don't. Definitely didn't feel like this was a bid to get bids on a design. Because people gave a design. We're gonna put in 250 kilowatts, we're gonna use this panel, we're gonna use this inverter. People don't, I've never charged, I don't know people that charge for design services. I mean, as I said, this was a fixed price bid. It doesn't matter if you're paying your bookkeeper 31 bucks an hour. The winning bidder could technically, since they won the bid, they could say, okay, we're gonna design it, it's gonna cost $100,000. We got gazillions of hours and you'd have to pay that. I've just never heard of a solar bid that you're bidding out the design. I mean, people said exactly what they're gonna put in. So it's kind of confusing to me. But I asked some of the questions in the addendum and most of it just said, well, see what we said we wanted this and refer to that, but it really wasn't a design build bid. That's when we would say what we recommend. And it was only limited to 2 buildings, which I didn't think made sense. And that was justified by Ryan a couple of years ago based on a lower rate, but that lower rate now is what the upper rate was back then. And there's 10 other buildings with a higher rate. So you didn't get what you should have gotten.
How long have you been in the business?
14 years. Probably put in 45,000 solar panels and a lot of nonprofits, a lot of metal roofs. I probably did more nonprofits anywhere in the state. I've used 20 products for us, the first customer. We own about 160 solar systems. Me and 2 partners from an old feed-in tariff program, and we know what works and what doesn't work. And And one of the bidders, Elemental Energy, they are very into microinverters, and I chatted with the owner. And they didn't bid on putting in microinverters under 800 pounds. I mean, nobody would do that. I mean, whether it's solar or anything else, the main failure point in electronics is connectors. And you're just doubling the amount of connectors, and you're putting in tons of electronics that, you know, if you got one inverter, whether it's in warranty or not, it costs you $1,000 to replace that one inverter, because you gotta get to move 25 solar panels to get to it. We can replace a 60 kilowatt inverter in an hour. And I threw in an extra one. The prices have come down somewhat, so. It didn't feel like it was a bid to do a design, because everybody gave a design. So that's confusing to me.
That is, that is interesting. You know, everyone gave a design, but the RFP doesn't ask for a design.
I mean, it usually, I guess everybody just figures that's what you want when you're doing a bid.
Yeah, I mean, that's this, you know, it's part 3. It's responders approach to provide solar PV system, you know, what's your plan to achieve the scope of work objectives and proposed contract terms.
You know, if you look at all the bids, nobody had a microinverter except the winner. So, I mean, we could have all been wrong, you know, but,
I mean, yeah, I mean, you all provided designs, but it doesn't appear that the asks for design.
yeah,
So,
well, it did say somewhere in there, you're looking for the largest system possible. That's like the second
Yes.
sentence, and
Yeah.
I was the largest system possible.
Yeah.
On those 2 buildings. And I asked about, can we put them on other buildings? And they said, no, just look at these 2 buildings. Which didn't make sense to me.
No, I just the part that counts where it says, you know, what's the information that's required in your proposal? Cover letter, your team, your approach, but you know, just customer service, project related experience. But you're, you know, as you said, every single team
Including the web.
provided a design.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't give electrical schematics and how we're gonna hook up this to that, but you gotta do that when you get a permit. But I don't think anybody's gonna charge to do a design. That's. So anyway. You know, you guys had talked at your last meeting about batteries, and I just wanted to make a little comment about that. I'm sure you have generators in every building. And batteries they're getting cheaper, but they're still very expensive. And there's no economic case in terms of specific power rates with batteries at this point. So let's just say you put in, we want 200 kilowatt hours of batteries. Well, that would have cost you $200,000, and you would have got $200,000 less in solar. And, you know, would have run the building for 8 hours. So, well-meaning. Kind of is in the ocean, I think. For big, you know, you should rather spend 200 grand to put an LED dimmable lighting, you know, places or something. Have to load it down. You get a big electrical load in this building. But I did have a very unusual, if I bid this again, I would put a very unusual thing in there about batteries that makes a lot of sense. But if I tell you about it, then if you rebid it, then everybody else will do the same thing. I can tell you, not in the meeting, but that makes sense. That's all.
Maybe we'll have an opportunity to learn about that in the.
Well, you got any questions?
We're good? We're good.
I
you.
appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Goodred.
Want to deliberate on this now or?
I'm available.
I'd be comfortable deliberating now or.
Just make it clear that the public hearing closed.
The public hearing has closed. So now, and, the written record was closed. So, deliberations now. Since I guess, two of you feel that way?
We do need to make a motion to close the hearing
I would go
and
ahead,
the.
yeah. Yes, make a motion to go ahead and close the hearing record. And of course, if you're gonna deliberate today.
I move that we close both the oral and written record and begin deliberations today.
I will second it.
Is there any further discussion? So, calling for the vote, Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
Commissioner DeVoe,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes.
I'll start off, I mean, I do want to thank everybody for being engaged in this RFP. Sounds like there was quite a bit of response to it. This is an appeal to the decision process, and I know that we have to take this seriously. It is serious business. It's a big number. Interesting knowing that here's a set dollar amount, how much can you build for that? So it's a little bit backwards from what we see sometimes. But I do support the RFP as provided, so that would getting to a denial of the appeal.
Yeah, I mean, I think today that we had, after reading through the staff report, I had a lot of questions that could have resulted in finding that the solicitation was unnecessarily restrictive or legally flawed, or that the winning bid was non-responsive, but after the discussion, the presentation today and the discussion with staff, I'm pretty comfortable that I don't think any of the challenges rose to those levels.
So is that a second to that motion?
Oh, yeah, it wasn't a motion yet. I was just
Wasn't a
giving a
motion?
position, yeah.
Okay, then.
I'd just say that, this is a solar system in a dynamic environment. It's a requirement of another capital project. It's exciting to be able to offset energy use. But I'm referring to the dynamic environment, the costs are changing, the technology. I do worry about the microinverter company going out of business. Enphase, I think he was referring to, as one of them. But people are coming and going in this industry sometimes, and it's very dynamic. So being able to spend this money for this purpose is a good thing for the environment. So I'm looking forward to having this project on the building. But then, yeah, batteries are the next thing that's about it.
The question remains to me, why was it just limited to 2 buildings? I guess that was where we thought that's how much money we had to spend, and that's where we were gonna spend it. But, and then, honestly, I always try and buy American products. That's what I attempt to do. I love it when you see the light bulbs that they say they're gonna last for 20 years and they cost $25 and they burn out in like 5 months. It happens all the time. So I really appreciate him coming in here and pointing out some things, because as you say, the industry is in total flux. And it just seems like you have to be so careful, and I do want Deschutes County to be transparent and to be able to get 7 bids and people think they actually have a shot at getting selected. So it was very interesting when you looked at the scoring, like, oops, why did somebody get all 15s and then somebody else, there's got to be something going on there. And we said he'd been in business for 14 years. That's to survive 14 years in this industry is, I would think, rather significant.
No, I'm really glad that these proposers are not stuck with conceptual design that they gave us in their proposal. It was great to have another expert come in here and basically share knowledge about, you know, a whole different approach and what some of the advantages of that might be. And, you know, we actually do have the opportunity, whoever gets this award, to use some of those ideas if they determine that those, you know, that there's advantages to, you know, using someone else's thought process. So yeah, but also, yeah, to reemphasize, just I'm appreciative that that Energy Wise came in here as well to share their thought process and maybe, you know, sharpen all of our thinking about design of these systems. And, you know, maybe there's things that we heard about or discussed today that'll sharpen our procurement processes as well.
And if somebody's missing like one of the necessary attachments, shouldn't they be, I mean, not that they can reapply, but shouldn't they be notified immediately while you forgot? Nobody really even noticed it till the end. I would have thought someone might have noticed they were missing one of the necessities, one of the requirements. And then it would have totally taken them out of the game, but you do have to follow the rules. But then again, what are the rules? That's what's been brought up today. So any more comments? Calling for the vote then, Commissioner Chang?
Yeah,
You didn't make a motion?
Well, I'll move to uphold the document number 2024-811, which is the selecting E2 Solar for this contract, which is denying the project.
Second.
Okay, now is there any quick discussion on denying them? None? Okay, Commissioner Bond,
Yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and I don't know, I feel like we need to learn, I've learned a lesson here, so I'll vote yes, but I'm really hoping that we learned something today. So.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we have a letter of support for Department of Interior for Redmond.
Great, thank you, Commissioner, and Chris Doty's here again. We've coordinated on this a bit, and Chris, I'll just say
All right,
here.
great. So before you board in your packet, it's a letter of support. BLM is currently requesting public input regarding a proposed sale of 541 acres to the city of Redmond. I think you're familiar with the City of Redmond Wetlands Complex and what they're attempting to provide out there in the way of wastewater treatment. Of course, not just for Redmond's growth, but also accommodating Terrebonne. They were here earlier today, the wastewater sewer district, discussing that as well. So just briefly attached for you is a letter of support, declaring the board's support for the sale, noting the various public benefits that will take place resulting from its development, not just in the way of wastewater treatment, but the wetlands itself, the trails that will be provided out there. It's really a very nice public use meets infrastructure project that will be constructing. So
I would just ask that our names all go on the bottom of the letter and not on the next page.
yeah, I think
Jan.
that has been amended. So
Okay,
okay,
well, I'm glad I said that.
I go this way, they go that way. That's a much better version. So
Okay,
yeah,
I mean, it's better. I was like, well, okay.
Yeah, thanks for putting it in a nice concise form here. I know this is kind of feedback to the BLM letter that came to us, but
right.
I support this.
Supportive as well. I guess my key question is, are we hearing anything that indicates that there's opposition to this recreation and public purposes Purpose Act conveyance?
I've not heard anything. I know they went through the land use process and dealt with adjacent property owners to that degree, but just given the amount of BLM property out there, BLM's intention to actually do other things to increase public use in other parts of that Steamboat Rock area. The fact that it will provide, a public use component, it's not really taking it out completely out of public access. Just no OHV riding, in the wetlands area. I'm not familiar with any.
Creating a new recreational use.
Yeah,
as
within,
well.
I'm not familiar with any input. I don't know that I would be if there was some, but certainly haven't heard any.
How soon does this need to actually be accomplished?
The letter needs to be submitted
Well,
by
not the
November
letter, but I
2nd.
meant if it actually goes through, what is the usage need date for Redmond?
Right now, their project is on the path to be delivered in 2027.
27?
I believe this particular portion will be, to acquire some area for future development and growth into. I don't know that it's a part of their immediate development plan. But they're on the path to purchase. They're well along that path. We're in that window of public input.
So the Terrebonne wastewater project they don't need to have a place for the collected wastewater to go until 2027.
Hopefully they'll by 2027, they'll be there. It'd be a good problem to have.
The pipe right to there.
Yeah, it'd be a good problem to have, and Terrebonne's talked about that. What happens if we actually have our system fully developed before the city of Redmond's ready to take it? Could there be an interim, drain field, basically that could be constructed, things like that? Something they'll have to, basically address as those kind of 2 dates collide.
Did we allocate money to help with that waste?
We did, yeah,
$1 million?
$1 million, half our, but half pill.
Yeah, oh, yes, of course. All right, so is there a motion?
Approval of letter to BLM in support of Redmond Wetlands Complex. Second,
The discussion, Commissioner Devon,
yes.
Commissioner Chang,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Thank you, Chris.
Important, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for getting those all on the same line. Other items?
Mr. Wastewater.
Yeah.
Other duties as assigned.
Tomorrow. Any other items?
So there's a letter from DSL about Fish and Wildlife revised maps delineating greater sage grouse area. I don't know if we all got this, it came in last week. So I just wanted
Yay or nay?
oh, come on in, we're just finishing
We're
up.
not quite done, but yes, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Kind of
No,
the
it's
same
fine.
thing, if I can hand, if you have, if you can hand this off for Peter to look at sage grouse area, I don't know if there's anything back on, so. As I say, they're just publishing the maps, so we may be way up on that already.
Kyle's been tracking this for ED, right?
I can't remember if I've been tracking it. I'm aware of it. It come through an email last week.
Yeah, so it's just,
Right,
we might all got it.
we all received
Yeah.
it.
So just a little update of what that means, if it means anything. That's all.
Well, I mean, I would be curious how much the map has changed essentially from the last
Yeah.
designated area. I mean,
Yep. So I guess, yeah,
I don't
that's
have
a
any-
little update at some point then.
I don't have any concerns about it, but if somebody, if Kyle or somebody else has. The 2 GIS layers, just throw together a map for us that shows what it was and what it is now. That would be interesting to see.
And then
I believe
today,
I do believe there was changes within the county. I don't know how significant.
we got an email from Redmond about the large lot technical advisory committee, and I think Commissioner Dare and I are both on here, along with Chris Doty. So this is just comparing notes in a meeting about who was gonna attend this. So Redmond Large Lot Tract Technical Advisory Committee. Talking about utilities going to there. Were you gonna go or?
I was gonna go, but I thought, well, something must have happened in the meantime. And then I got that email today and I thought, oh, well, I guess they haven't had any meeting for 3 months.
Okay, so you're gonna attend that though. I guess that's all I'm
Yeah.
making sure.
I just sent it to Brenda to say,
Yep,
fill it out
okay.
while we could do it.
That's all.
It's like the 15th or something.
making sure
Is that
you're-
crazy? All right, anything else?
Unless I did something last Friday, but now.
Okay, Commissioner Chang?
I'll mention that I went to the Ben Redmond Habitat for Humanity ribbon cutting. Redmond last week at Cedar Avenue. Big project for seven. Essentially 7 townhouses, so like all in one solid block of building, but broken into 7 discrete housing units. Right, beautiful project.
Anything else? Okay. And I will bring up that I was actually at the LGAC meeting Friday morning in Salem. And of course, no one basically from the state was there in person. They're always on Zoom, including the director of behavioral health. And then we did have an excellent report from Kate Button, who does homeless outreach in Eugene. And what she said when I was talking to her about that was, I said, well, I know we need to be with people that were trying to transition at least 4 times a week. And she goes, well, Patty, more is even better. So, okay, searching for 4, and she's saying, oh no, you've got to even do more than that. But my quote from that meeting was from John Collins, who's the deputy director of behavioral health, I believe. And he said, building beds is not always the solution. And I go like, we're like the second most addicted state in the nation, and we don't have many beds. So I couldn't believe that was, and I did ask him about that statement because I was really kind of surprised he would make it. It seems like and I said in Central Oregon, I heard Janice, you were on the call, and I said, we need more beds here. We desperately need more beds here, and we need more beds for kids here because we are, we help out the other 18 counties to the east and, on our side of the mountain, and whatever we could do it would be appreciated. So beds would be significant. So that was my takeaway from that, but nobody from the state is actually attending that meeting. I'm not quite sure how we can, as AOC can re-engage them, but I do believe in person is beneficial, and it's unfortunate that they're not there, but they're always somewhere else. So any other comments today? Anyone else? Okay, so is it time now for Kim to read so we can go into exec?
The Deschutes County Board of Commissioners will now convene an executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660. The specific authorization for this executive session is ORS 192.660 subsection 2E, which allows the board to meet in executive session in order to discuss real property negotiations. Designated staff and the media are allowed to remain during the executive session. However, the media may only report that the board met in executive session and the identified basis for meeting in executive session. Recording devices are not permitted. No final decisions will be made in executive session, and at the conclusion of the executive session, we will open the doors and invite the audience back.
And I did forget to mention that I did go to the Farm Bureau dinner, but I'll say that on Wednesday.
That's you, yeah.
Okay, Kim, open the door. All right,
You have to say proceed as discussed.
yes, please proceed, discuss. Thank you very much. Meeting adjourned. We will be open session Wednesday morning at 9 AM. Thank you.
Joint meeting with Fair Board, I do,
Well, are they coming to that?